So, there are many, and I mean many, iconic difficult games. I'm sure that if I ask you to think of a difficult game, games like Dark Souls, Cuphead, and maybe even Hollow Knight come to mind. And I imagine that for an even larger number of you, you might think of a couple of other games that fit that descriptor, or even moments in games that felt like a massive jump in difficulty. And a lot of people look at these games fondly, and honestly, I do too. So, growing up, I've always played more of the kid-friendly games. The games you expect a kid to play. Kirby, Sonic, even some Legend of Zelda in there as well, yeah? But when I think back on those games, I find myself thinking of and fondly remembering the moments that used to piss me off to no end. Especially the moments that, in retrospect, weren't that difficult to begin with. Taking Kirby Superstar Ultra, for instance. I remember being but a wee lass and finally making it to the true arena. It was a battle for sure. And while most of the bosses, despite being their stronger variants, were threatening for sure, there was one boss in particular that was always just a run killer for me. And that was Galactonite. No matter how hard I tried, it felt impossible, and eventually, I gave up. I ended up begging my sister to beat the game for me, which she did, and it actually wouldn't be for a very long time before I managed to beat Galactonite on my own without any external help. But even though I failed many times, in that moment, it forged a lifelong memory for me. Not just for the game, but for that moment in my life as a whole. It's been years now, and I still think about that struggle and the bond I forged with my sister over a challenge that felt bigger than us at the time. And that wasn't the only moment where that happened. Be it on my own, facing a difficult platforming section, cheering on a friend doing something challenging, or even trying to work on a tricky puzzle with my family. It all left a lasting memory I still look back to even to this day. And I bet the same goes for many of you guys as well. Maybe there was a challenge you took on in a game that you can remember to this day. Or maybe there's even a moment in a game that just sticks with you. And while difficulty alone is not a crucial thing to make your game memorable, there are many games that use difficulty as not only a selling point, but as a narrative device as well. Because if there's one thing that difficult games are good at doing, is getting a visceral reaction out of someone.
Oh my god! I'm done! Oh god! Why?
This, of course, is for better or worse. But if you really attempt to harness that feeling, you can definitely create something truly magical. A feeling of immersion. Let's say you wanted the player to really understand how the character was feeling, either mentally or physically, and you just wanted them to really understand the difficulty of said situation. Then, why not just make the game more difficult? There are so many times where a game will be all like, yo, that's Biff the Undefeatable! You can't beat him! Only for you to three-shot them no problem for the sake of moving the plot along. It strips away the chance of immersion for the player, and it never gives them that chance to really know what it feels like to fight someone who is undefeatable. But again, you have games like Dark Souls, Cuphead, Celeste, and even Getting Over It that tell you, look, shit sucks, and this uphill battle is oftentimes gonna feel like a goddamn wall, but you have to keep climbing. These type of games make difficulty a part of the journey. You're going to get hurt, and obviously, you're going to fail a lot. But through that pain, that suffering, and the torment, you're going to learn something. Or you're going to die trying. But like with most things in life, there's a point where you have to draw the line. A moment where something is just too much. And with things like games, we have to ask ourselves, at what point does a difficult game stop being fun? Rain World is the hit indie game made by Videocode, released in 2007. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah, so Rain World is best described as a unassuming game. From the synopsis on the Steam page to the trailers provided, the game doesn't really tell you much about what's going on underneath. And if you try to do a little bit of research and read reviews on the game, you will see quite a few contradicting inputs, to say the least. You have one camp that says this game is aimless, a walking simulator, and rage bait in its purest form. And then you have the other side of the camp saying that this game changed their life and how incredible this game was. And then there was this honestly massive middle ground of people saying they couldn't even manage to finish the game due to its difficulty. And when you take a look at this game, you get the sense that there's more lurking underneath the surface. It's like dropping a coin in a well and waiting for a sound. You want to find out, but you have yet to get the full picture. And there's only one way to get that answer. The first time you boot up this game, you get, well, actually you don't really get much, but you do get this beautiful song in the main menu with the ambient jungle noises, which, okay, look, I need you guys to focus, okay? Look at me, look at the screen. Actually, wait, no, you don't need to look at the screen, just look, you just listen, okay? This song is a secret weapon, okay? And I need you to remember this melody, all right? This is a surprise tool that will help us later. Trust me on this. Won't regret it. I definitely did it. But aside from the music, you're offered 3 choices. Well, more like 2.5 choices because one is blocked out for now, but you get what I mean. And I figured it was safe to assume that these options function as a sort of easy, normal, and hard mode for the game. And Mama didn't raise a coward, but Hunter was not available. So I guess we're going middle of the road. I would honestly say that this game starts off pretty normal. Sad, but normal. This is you. You are this thing. It's called a slug cat, or a scug for short. And after a horrible storm separates you from your family, you are left stranded far away from anything you once knew, and you're left to figure out things on your own. And after that, well, you do get a brief tutorial on the mechanics of this game, and some general pointers courtesy of this guy. But otherwise, you don't really get a lot of information on what exactly is going on or what to do. You're told you need to eat, sleep, and that's it. Now, dialing it back a second, let's address the new face on the scene. This guy. Now, I'll be honest, I've been calling this guy a dragonfly because he kind of reminded me of Spark from Spyro because they're both little yellow helpers, but the community refers to him as Iggy. So for the sake of keeping things clear, I'll just be referring to him as Iggy moving forward, okay? And Iggy can do quite a few things, like point out food, point out danger, directions, and places you can hibernate. Oh, and very rarely breaking the fourth wall. They will also sometimes give you projections of other things, images giving tips and advice on how to do specific things, or what to look out for. Some of them make sense in the moment, but others only give more questions than they do answers. But Iggy isn't the only major thing of note you're bound to encounter early on in the game. There's one more important guest we have yet to introduce. This is a lizard, and he is not your friend. And I regret to inform you that it was seen that about 80 to 95% of the world does not like you. And that includes, but is not limited to, the creatures, the flora, and the very earth itself. But wait, there's more. Because there still is one more thing we have yet to introduce to the playing field. So, can you tell me why this game is called Rain World? Wow, Gooplopper wasn't lying. Really do be raining in this world. Rain World is an A+ lesson, and you figure it out. Excluding the aforementioned tutorial at the beginning and Iggy here, you really only get information far and few between. And the icing on the cake is that even the things they do teach you early on can be built upon and dove into deeper. As an example, let's take a step back and look at the movement abilities in this game. So the game tells you early on that you can grab items, jump, stomach items, crawl, run, and throw items as well, and that's it. But just like I was mentioning earlier, Rain World does not show its full hand to you. Sure, you have these mechanics, but what Rain World won't tell you is that the movement in this game gets a lot more involved than this. What if I told you that you can backflip? What if I told you that you can store turn momentum and launch yourself further than average? What if I told you that you can just fly? Now, obviously, a lot of these techs are a lot more difficult to execute than I make it sound. And don't worry, you don't need to perfect every single movement in this game to get the best possible experience. But the fact that this game has like, what, 7 buttons total and does movement tech better than some games that practically sell themselves on such things is incredible to me. It makes me think of other games similar to Rain World, games where controls can be, or even limiting at first, only to surprise you when you start really putting two and two together, and that you're not as weak as you may have thought. And by the way, if you want to know the things you could pull off in this game, I highly recommend Fist Lorderino's video showcasing the movement tech of this game. They explain it better than I ever could, and it's just a fantastic video all around. So let's see. So far, we got a few pieces on our board that present us with our journey, our method of progression, and the obstacles in the way. And now we have that combined with trying to learn and perfect the movement mechanics to get better at exploring the world, having nearly every single living entity want you dead in some shape or form, attempting to explore progressively more and more winding and confusing locations, hunt for and eat enough food so I can hibernate, all the while being on a time limit, which by the way varies from day to day. And oh, I forgot something else. Things are not always the same from day to day, or rather from cycle to cycle, because you might start to notice that some of the creatures don't always spawn in the exact same spot in the map, and chances are by the time you get there they might already be on the move. So now you also need to be mindful that danger can potentially be literally anywhere. And with all that combined, I started to realize something so many people before me were warning me about. This game is very, very unforgiving and very, very difficult. So there are a few overlaying aspects of this all that I really want to highlight as to what makes Rain World so infamously difficult. And for that, we do need to circle back to the whole discussion about immersion and the lack of tutorials. Compared to almost any other game that I personally know of, this game felt so alive. I have played quite a few games now that really promote and market themselves on their large, expansive worlds, fit with engaging elements to keep things feeling alive. But where a lot of those games fall short is, ironically, where the player joins in the picture. I mean, look, sure, there are tons of games out there where the wildlife may hunt each other, and given time, it feels like the very fabric of the game seems to strain a bit. Not enough to ruin the game, mind you, but just enough to know that you're not really a part of this world. You're the player, and you're not outsmarting a creature. It's about waiting for the attack, then handling the attack, and then maybe even exploitation tricks, and eventually just overpowering the enemy. But now, let's look back at Rain World. By playing the game, I started to notice more and more how the world doesn't really feel like it revolves around you. It often feels like some external entity just placed you in this world, and who knows how long this world has been like this. The predators may hunt you down, sure, but they also got priorities. They all have things they fear, things that can distract them or deter them or even appeal them. Let's take a look at lizards. These fellows are easily some of the most common creatures you'll see across the map, but they don't just stand there doing their rotations waiting for the player to show up so they can do their attack protocol. They fight and defend territory, they hunt things other than the player, and run away from things that could kill them. And I'm not even going to try to explain the scavengers. That is something I don't think I'm nearly equipped enough to go over right now. I don't think I have ever felt as dejected as someone playing a video game, but welcomed as a cog in an ecosystem I never knew I wanted a part in. And honestly, I was starting to embrace it a bit. Before that point, the game did feel cruel, rage-inducing at times, and sometimes it even just felt plain unfair. Yet, for some reason, I found myself waiting? I wasn't even sure what I was waiting for, and I still don't know what that is. But I noticed that at some point, I was holding my breath. It was like I was waiting for that one big moment, you know? When you get that one big power-up, or when you get that cool ability or weapon, or even that item that changes the game as a whole moving forward. So I started to get in my own head and believe that this was all a trick, right? I mean, yeah. Video Cult just wants me to feel powerless right now so that when I do get that power up, it'll be all the more rewarding, right? Okay. Well, surely there's some sort of experience gaining system in this game, right? I mean, there's those symbols in the lower left-hand corner that match the toaster gates all over the place. maybe I need to grind more? Maybe there's a cutscene coming up where they'll reveal that I was in fact the chosen one, and this was my journey to fix this world and reunite with my family. So it's safe to say nothing happened, and nothing kept happening. And again, my feelings began to change. I started to think, well, this world doesn't care about me. And honestly, it was great. Sure, there was no mercy for the player in this world, but there was also no pressure for literally anything else in this world. And just like you, a lizard needs to eat, and they need to run for shelter, all the same at the end of a cycle. A scavenger is worried if you're a friend or foe in the same way you might approach a new thing. A badfly just doesn't want to be food in the exact same way you don't want to be food. And I think that is crucial because, yes, you are a part of this world. You're no hero, you're no protagonist either. You're just you. And that's not a bad thing, you know? But that doesn't mean you're shit out of luck. No. Because just like a creature in the wild, this game rewards you deeply for doing one specific thing. Observing. As we already gone over before, nothing in this game is spelled out for you. So the real secret to getting through this game is to take time to digest all the elements at play and how you can work around it or even beat it. And given time, you start to learn more about the ecosystem, the tales of danger on the horizon, the things that creatures like and dislike, how other creatures approach dangerous situations, and how you can literally improvise, adapt, and overcome. Even as I learned to navigate the world, there will still be moments where I learned something new, or the threat still needed to be treated as such. It was like driving a car. Just because you learned how to drive, it didn't mean that the giant metal death box was suddenly totally fine. You just understood it better. And mistreating it or playing around too much can and will lead to your death. So just because you found out lizards aren't invincible and it's just their heads and they actually have squishy soft backsides, it doesn't actually mean that you can kill them efficiently. Or if it's even viable to kill them given everything else going on. There's seemingly very little reward for doing so. You can't even eat it. And the chances are a new one will just be there next cycle. Or worse. Time and time again, the world taught me something new, all because I stopped and just observed. And the more I did this, the more I started to love this world. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was still an absolute nightmare, and the dangers only got greater the further I went. But getting to learn as I go was definitely a highlight of the game so far. It was honestly kind of freeing to not have a pop-up showing up every 5 seconds reminding me how to do mechanics, or Iggy being all like, hey, watch out for that pit there. It was just me and whatever I was capable of learning and discovering and doing. And once again, I got that feeling like I finally figured it out to some degree. Study this world, become a part of it, embrace it, make it yours, and make it home. It just makes sense. I think I can work with this. And then I made it to Shoreline. So by this point, it has been a couple hours of playing Rain World. The game has been challenging, confusing, and pretty dang mysterious as well. And aside from the 18,000 different kinds of horrors that want to eat me, the game has honestly been pretty nice. Once I essentially let go of my ego and started to accept exploration for what it was, I found myself both having fun, but also at a bit of a stalemate. There have been plenty of funny moments. No, that poor bug. Scary moments. I promise I'll be nice to you. I know I'm kind of holding you by like the scruff right now. And interesting moments. What? Are you kidding me? What the hell? But I thought it was maybe time to hang it up. So when I finally made it to Shoreline, I was still amazed by the new scenery, the new creatures, and oh my god, what is that? I was getting pretty done with the whole thing until I finally saw what Iggy had been trying to guide us to this whole time. But before I get into that specifically, I do want to practice what I've been preaching and just take a moment to step back and digest everything we've seen so far so I can properly explain why that moment was so impactful. I know we already talked quite a bit about the creatures of Rain World and the sort of gameplay loop for the game as well. But we have yet to really get into the world of Rain World. So on a surface level, mwah, gorgeous, gorgeous pixel art. I know I've already mentioned being a huge sucker for some good pixel art, but this game is really gorgeous at times. And later on in the game, you'll come across even more beautiful places, one of which is my personal favorite vantage point. But underneath all the pixels, we are once again face to face with Rain World's patent skill of show, don't tell. The world around us is chock full of little details, both of which show our current situation and what it may have been once upon a time. And these little details also carry little secrets with them as well. Like, for example, there was something I showed you earlier in this video that contained a secret to the end of this game. I won't tell you what it is, just know that it's there. I suppose it's obvious enough to say that when it comes to a game like Rain World, environmental storytelling will be your best friend here. And while yes, there are ways to discover much more about the world around us, and trust me, we'll go into that point a little bit later, I just want to take a moment to just talk about the world we're in now, especially now that we spent some time talking about our story and the creatures involved. At first glance, it is obvious to me that wherever we are, it has long been abandoned. There are tons of building and machinery that seem to have been long forgotten from an era long before us. Nature is slowly taking over, and the creatures of this world are beginning to make this place their new habitat once again. Every now and again, you get this faint insight on the things that once were here long before you, but not nearly enough to get a good gauge on who or what exactly they are. We're left wondering, who exactly were these people? Was there someone who was looking out for you by leaving these notes everywhere? Or maybe it was someone in a similar position to you who decided to leave a heads up. Regardless of the answer, you can benefit from the little hints and tells the world warns you of, and admire the art of those long gone. But it can also sometimes be a little tricky to tell just exactly how long they have been gone for. While we may not be able to pinpoint an exact location and time, I think it's safe to say that it has been a very long time. And especially given the current weather affairs, it's even safer to say no one has stepped foot here for potentially even longer. But then what did they do to handle such violent weather? Because in case you haven't noticed, we haven't seen a single house down here, just machines. Which leads me to talking about another fascinating aspect of Rain World's world. It's got this weird blend of familiar and unfamiliar, creating this push and pull when it comes to things you recognize and the oddities that will draw you further in. Satellite discs and megaphones can occupy the skies, but the plants on the earth are unlike anything I've ever seen. You can come across creatures that make sense for their environments, and others that don't particularly seem to be organic at all. And the deeper you go into this world, the more these strange oddities start to occur. It goes from sensible to fantastical, and sometimes just outright disturbing. So while it may not be as apparent as the story itself or the gameplay itself, I feel like the environment helps to lull you into a world that you want to see for yourself. And with a world like this, one that's been forgotten and left to wither away, it can sometimes feel like we, the player, have been left with a bunch of random puzzle pieces. We see the end result of the world, but we don't know what caused this, and we're left to use our own imagination to figure out what might have been. And in a weird way, you can almost think of it like a collaborative effort between the player and the makers of the game. One leaves the clues, and the other is making the story as they go through, interpreting things in their own way, and coming to their own conclusions on what the game means to them. I'm sure that there are many other people out there who have done reviews and analysis of this game that have different perspectives to the one I have right now, and I think that's kind of the point, yeah? So, circling back to Shoreline. Up to this point, Shoreline has been beautiful, pretty frustrating, but ultimately not too different from the rest of the many dilemmas I've encountered thus far. Throughout our journey, Iggy has been trying to help us, or at least guide us along. And while for the most part, I either ignored what Iggy said or just didn't understand what it was supposed to mean, there was one symbol that really didn't make any sense to me at all. This one. Most of the symbols make sense to me, or at the very least, you can figure it out in due time. But this one, it just didn't make sense to me. And yet Iggy kept insisting that whatever that was, it was this way. So I kept following, until I made it all the way here at the very edge of Shoreline, to this weird place. It's hard to explain it, but once I made it here, there was a strange calm that overtook me. This place felt strangely safe in what has been a literal entire world filled with danger. This was the first time I felt like I could relax my shoulders a bit. It was the same kind of calm you get when you finally come home after a long day. It was quiet here. And aside from the stray jellyfish, there wasn't really any danger to be had. So I kept going further until I came across that. Despite all the scary and strange things I saw along the way, I still wouldn't have imagined meeting a little blue thing at the end of the world. A strange thing connected to this giant metal hinge, sitting atop a pile of junk. It was alive, and surprisingly, it didn't want me dead either. Getting closer would reveal that apparently I don't speak French, so this wasn't really working out for either of us. I do understand one thing though. Whatever this thing is, and whatever those things are above it, it really does not like it when you grab them, because when I did try to, this happened. Safe to say, they really didn't like that. And to top it off, this music was playing the whole time. I think it was just a moment for me, right here. This is where the game went from a pretty difficult but fun game to a game I knew I wanted to see to the end. And after what felt like so long, there was some solid confirmation that there was so much more to be discovered. And I know that sounds dramatic, but this was the moment that really saved the game for me. And even now in post, this moment still feels like a lot. But there was a lot to unpack at this moment, and sadly not nearly enough time to do so. So, unfortunately, all we can do is leave them be for now. But, to my surprise, Iggy wasn't done. It seems like there is still more to do, I guess. And it was a bit tricky to say whether or not I was back to square one again. Sure, I have made a new discovery, a pretty big one this time, but where do I go from here? I guess there's only one way to find out. So I know I have mentioned it earlier, but I imagine that for those of you who got to this point in the game, you most likely come across quite a few things that just don't make sense. And we talked a lot about immersion and what it takes to draw in a person. It's a mixture of several things working together in tandem to create something equally intriguing, challenging, and inviting at the same time. These all lend to what I would consider to really make Rain World what it is. But there are still two-ish things I have yet to really touch up on when it comes to Rain World and what makes this game what it is. One of those things being mystery. Now, like I said earlier, there's still so much to unpack with this game that just doesn't make sense. There are all these little hints to something bigger lying underneath the surface. There are creatures that don't fully seem of flesh and blood. There's still active machinery sprinkled around that somehow involve you. There's the environment that alludes to things that once have been, and even the name of locations bring up questions at times. Anytime you encounter something new, it gives maybe at best one answer, but leaves 3 more questions behind. It feels like we're face to face with some sort of wolf in sheep's clothing now. I know you're not being honest with me. I know there's more out there, but you're not going to give me the answers freely, are you? If I want answers, I'm going to have to go looking for them. But there is a bit of a double-edged sword to mysteries, isn't there? There's the argument to be made that those who have come to their own conclusions may not like the answer they receive, and maybe some enjoy the journey more than they do the answer. In Rain World's case, it's tricky. Like any good mystery, you have little information and few leads. There's a little blue alien at the edge of the map, and the only companion you've had this entire time has been guiding you there this whole time. You can't even read the language of this world, and even your dreams can oftentimes leave you with more questions than answers. But there is still the rest of the world left to discover. And Iggy thinks our work here isn't quite over yet. But even still, there's no clearly explained objective. I'm not sure where exactly I'm supposed to be heading, so to speak. Even with all these looming mysteries adding up, Rain World still does not directly tell me what to do next or where to go. The best we've gotten so far are merely suggestions. And you know what? Sure, I'll take it. Look, this game has already been weird as hell for the entire duration of the game time. But now I'm even more confused. We went from an abandoned juggled machinery place to total darkness and a church-like place? Which, by the way, I forgot to mention this. But video call told me to tell you that if you have arachnophobia, you should go fuck yourself. Like, no, seriously, look at this. This is how you give people phobias. But you know what? I'll just go ahead and ignore the horrors happening over there, because I know for the most part, I haven't really been giving a lot of attention to specific regions other than Shoreline. But you know what? Shaded Citadel is an underrated region. I know when compared to other regions, Shaded Citadel may be lacking in the visual departments for majority of the places, but much like the other regions, this place still has amazing music, and honestly has one of my personal favorites from the soundtrack. And just like other places, there are tons of little secrets and details sprinkled all over the place, giving life to the game and hints to something more under the surface. Like this place seemingly being a place of worship, and the way darkness envelops nearly everything in this entire place. And What? Look, I know this game has been weird and everything, but really things are getting absolutely wild now. What was that? Was this on anyone's bingo sheet? Did anyone go, oh, I sure hope a glowing pine cone tentacle monster appears in front of me? But guess what? I guess we finally got that upgrade we've been waiting for. Too bad you still have no idea what it's used for. And if you try to go back there, that thing is gone. Cool. Once again, we're left with this bizarre but amazing moment. And it's over before you can really process what happened. Left with the only conclusion of just keep moving forward, doing whatever you were doing originally. And just because that moment is over, it's not like Shaded relents. No. The scenery, when you can see it, gets weirder and weirder, and the creatures here are scary, but not too bad once you get to know them. Why do I even bother at this point? Let's just ignore the insane scissor chicken posse down there for now, because past this point, it only gets more and more bizarre until you end up here at the leg. And here at the leg, we get to reunite with a certain someone. Now more blue and a lot more scary. Great! But I do have some good news. The rain doesn't seem to affect us here. But now we have this instead. This game really loves making my life as confusing and as difficult as possible, doesn't it? And, of course, once again, when I made my way out of this hell zone, I ended up somewhere new. And much like with Shoreline, this was a pivotal moment in the game for me. If Shoreline was the moment where I realized I wanted to go further with this game, this next area was the moment that was the payoff in my eyes. And it really opened the door on what was going on. And it provided some answers at long last. So, everyone, welcome to 5 Pebbles. So, for real this time, I have some good news, and I mean it. There is no more rain. At least while we're here, and seemingly no catch. And acknowledging the elephant in the room, we also seem to have 0 gravity. And at first I thought it was because we were in space. But the discovery of what exactly is causing the gravity issues was better than I could have ever imagined. But what I'm pretty sure is the first time in this journey we've come across somewhere new that doesn't seem to have anything natural left. The only things from the outside that seem to be in here is, well, those guys. But there's also these little things that were next to the little blue alien. And since no one is around, I mean, I might as well help myself, no? I guess this counts as a power-up. Well, I guess we can check that off the list then. I know I would sound like a broken record here saying this over and over again, but this place is just so bizarre. This place seems to be mostly mechanical. It was both beautiful and scary and... I'm sorry. It's hard to describe exactly my thought process here. Yeah, I figured this world was pretty tech-savvy, but everything we've seen up till this point was broken down and damaged. But now, there were projections on the walls, generators fighting to stay on, bug zapper things flickering and humming with power. For arguably the first time, and ironically so, the most unnatural place felt the most alive. And Something more about this place felt so familiar, but also unfamiliar. I don't think I've ever been here before, but something kept reminding me of something else. And that's when I focused on the music. There it is again. Something I haven't had the chance to really talk about yet, but now feels like a better time than any to approach it, is the music. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this song follows you. It is tucked in a lot more songs than you realize. But here, it's in the forefront. And while I'm not a musical expert, something about this moment and the music really made it for me. The music was getting louder and louder. Projections everywhere and those little glowing things swarming. I felt overwhelmed. It feels and sounds like when you're panicking and you start to think about a million things at once, trying to process it all at the same time while multitasking with a million other things as well. It's kind of like a computer would. But it all grew to become so intense, so noisy, so colorful, so scary until... You know the saying, be careful what you wish for? This feels like an apt moment for something like this. It talks. We can understand it now. It says it's godlike in comparison. We can understand them now after they did whatever that was to us. And they gave us a guide. Go west, past the farm arrays, and then down into the earth where the land fissures. And again, before you could even unpack anything, you're kicked out of the room. Even now, Rain World just can't give you a break, can it? But on your way out, there's still a lot more for you to unpack. For instance, these massive tapestries. For what I'm pretty sure is the first time we get an idea of what the ones before us looked like, tucked away in something far, far bigger than us. And quite possibly the most perfectly placed hibernation spot in the game is waiting for you, just in time to allow you to lie down and really think about what to do next. You can follow their instructions, go west and see what's there, but you've also been given this incredible power. Don't you want to see what is possible now that these doors have been opened for you? Something tells me that, even now, the show isn't over yet. No, the real challenge has just begun. And if we want answers, we have some work to do. And this will be quite possibly the most difficult thing to do yet. So, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot to unpack right now. Between having actual communication in the game for the first time and everything that just happened in there, we're left with that message. But Iggy also wanted us to collect some of those glowing things for the blue one back in Shoreline. And now we're left with quite a few choices. None of them right or wrong, just choices. Rain World, despite all of its challenges and mystery and difficulty and wonder, at its core, it has always been a game that, at least for me, was defined by your personal perspective and your personal view. So maybe for some, this was all they needed to see or hear. And for others, they needed more. I don't think either one person is right or wrong. Choices are just choices. And in the case of Rain World, well, I guess the thing in there said it best. If the ending is what you seek, then there it is. Go west. Problem solved. But if you're hoping for more answers, then there's a bit more work that needs to be done from this point, but you will get answers in due time. This game is what you make of it. The journeys is yours to interpret, to embrace or reject as you see fit. And maybe that's what Rain World meant by all of this. Maybe there wasn't some bigger part to play. They're just here, and you make up the situation as you see fit. But then it begs the question, what do I see in this situation? Well, when I try to sit down and think about it, I see, well, the difficulty and the hardships. I see the discovery. I see the remnants of things that have been. All things I think I've spoken on already. I feel like there's something more that I'm feeling that I can't quite bring myself to speak on yet. I don't feel like I'm a part of something bigger, but I do feel like I've seen things most creatures like me may never see. Oh, what most people in general won't see or feel. I imagine that for a lot of people, and judging by the achievements on Steam as well, most people don't make it this far into the game. But while we still have time here, we probably shouldn't just sit here. We do have to get going eventually. It's probably time for us to leave this place, at least for now, and try to figure out what we'll be doing moving forward. And oh, wow. At the very top of the world, there was a city this whole time, but look at it. No signs of color, no green, no life. Is this where the ones that were here before us used to live? But it's also a bit of an insulting whiplash. We go from finally having someone to talk to, only to see this massive empty city resting atop this godlike machine and realize that you're still so very alone right now. But that's not a bad thing. It's more so just a sense of scale. I had already figured I was a rather small speck in the grand scheme of things, but see this, I felt so small, I don't know. And you don't have to go much further before you get revelation number 2. We can feel your presence, little creature. Your attunement has become much closer to ours. The mark you received is an unimaginable gift. The struggle, the cycles, it can all fade like a morning mist beneath the glory of the sun. We found a way. Oh, it's not just the pink thing then. It begs the question of just who else I will be able to understand and where I can find them. And yet, again, before you can come to any concrete conclusion, you get to see this. Oh, we are so much smaller than I imagined. This also explains why it hasn't been raining where we are right now. But this right here is one of my all-time favorite views in the entire game. It's one thing to gaze at the clouds, but it's a whole other thing to be above the clouds, gazing at massive structures very much like the one you're standing on right now, humming with energy, knowing that just like yours, there are probably countless cities atop them, and chances are all of them empty. Now, outside of Rain World, and even outside of this game, and even outside of this internet stuff, I like to consider myself a bit of a loner, but there is a difference between being a loner and being lonely. I do have company I do keep. They're just very small and could be counted on one hand. But when there's no one around, no one to reach out to, and it's just me, I do feel lonely. And you know what? I think that might have been the underlying feeling this whole time. This game makes me feel lonely. I feel out of place and isolated in a giant world. And every time I meet someone new, I'm reminded time and time again just how much of an other I am. I get it. I really do. But back on the subject of Rain World, we still have a few things to process. After all, the only reason we even came all the way up here was at the behest of Iggy so that he could grab this little thing here. That way we would make the trick back and deliver it to the blue alien. Plus, with our newfound ability to communicate, there's a good chance we can speak with it. However, there is an emphasis on could. We could just follow instructions and go west and, well, do whatever that is. Ultimately, the choice is yours to make. But given the length of this video, I think you can guess what I chose. So once you make your way back to Luke's to the moon, you're finally able to talk to her. She shared information with us about 5 Pebbles, who is... Wait. 5 Pebbles. But the place was called 5 Pebbles. And the thing is also called 5 Pebbles? Okay. Anyway, she shares with us that due to her status, she can't really do much for us in terms of helping. But she does offer one great ability. The ability to socialize and communicate, and most importantly, bring her things. Now you can bring just about anything to Moon to get a unique input on what she has to say in relation to the item. But we're going to focus on one thing in particular. Scattered all around the world are pearls. And for the most part, they're just pretty little things that the scavengers love. But there are a few specific ones. Each one a unique color that contains far more secrets than they let on. And if you find them and bring them all to Moon, she will read all of them for you. I think it goes without saying that what I'm about to talk about next is spoilers, even more so than the things I brought up already. And what comes next is some of the hardest things I feel like I did in any game ever. But allow me to give you a summary on these pearls, okay? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give a summarized breakdown of each pearl. Then I'll get into my personal takes on what the lore may be. If you want a thorough reading of every single pearl in the base game, I highly recommend that you watch the exhaustive pearl analysis video by Das Zombies. But let's get into it. The first pearl starts off strongly, talking about something called the cycles. By this point, you may have seen the term cycles quite a bit since you see it every time you successfully hibernate. Moon explains that death isn't the end. And even when you do die, you just wake up again, for better or for worse. Life and death is like a ring. She also mentions that some are able to break the cycle, but unfortunately, neither of us are that lucky. This means that yes, you dying and being able to respawn is very much canon. And honestly, I love it when games do this. This next pearl is from Industrial Complex. This pearl talks about bone masks and the production and creation of them. And it also goes into how the ancients used to wear these masks for spirituality. However, the cruel irony is that while they were made in an effort to basically lessen their presence, the masks also had to become commodified, something that I feel like in our recent days we can definitely understand. The Drainage Pearl is another interesting one. It speaks of a verse where it compares the world to a tangled rug. And much like a knot, the nature of its existence is the fact that no parts are able to break free. It evolves to become a furry animal hide, and the ancients are the bugs crawling in that fur, which then evolves into a fishing net. Because the more we struggle, the more entangled we become. It finishes off by saying that only the limp body of the jellyfish cannot be captured by the net. We should try to become more like the jellyfish, because jellyfish don't try. Moon then goes on to express that for the ancients, the mixture of being burned with great ambition, but also believing that striving in and of itself was an unforgivable act. And she finishes off by mentioning that maybe that's why they delegated all their efforts onto them, implying the machines, like Moon and Five. This pearl is actually authored by Five Pebbles. It starts off talking about this thing called noise milking or rock swatting, but even Moon realizes that we have no idea what that means. That's when she goes on a tangent to mention the danger in garbage waste, namely that awful creature from before known as Brother Longlegs, but also to be wary of how excitable the scavengers may get in hope of getting their hands on such a pearl. Shoreline actually has quite a few pearls, 3 to be exact. This pearl explains that for Moon and Five to be able to function, they need a lot, and I mean a lot, of water. Think of a liquid cooler, but like times 500. And if they do not have any water, they produce too much buildup and die. Which, by the way, Moon says here that should this happen, it is an incredibly painful experience, and I want you guys to put a mental thumbtack in that because I'll be back for this pearl. So before Five was built, it was allegedly important to consider where exactly the iterator was placed. By the way, I think this is the first time we really came across it. They're called iterators, and the giant towers are called superstructures. But yeah, prior to Five's development, it was really important to make sure to know where exactly you were placing an iterator due to their water consumption rates. But once the ancients realized that they produced an insane amount of vapor and in turn rain, it led to water being available almost anywhere. It was a good idea in theory, but in practice, not so much. And again, this reveals something pretty huge. The reason why we've been having a torrential amount of rain is because of the iterators. But now we know why it rains so much, constantly. The Pink Shoreline Pearl is arguably one of the hardest pearls to obtain in my honest opinion. But I would also argue that the information inside is pretty worth it. Moon explains to us what a purpose organism is, mentioning that this pearl specifically is a genome for a small slug to clean pipes, and that in turn she herself is also a purpose organism. Although, due to breaking down so severely, all that is really left to her is this blue puppet we are currently talking to. And while she explains that most purpose organisms aren't nearly as close to her in terms of size or form, and that some were made for spectacle instead of industry, there is also a good chance that we're descendants of purpose organisms ourselves. The next pearl is interesting. This pearl was written by Moon. She writes an essay talking about another iterator by the name of Sliver of Straw, who became well known after she became the first iterator to give the triple affirmative that the big problem was solved. And she was also one of the few that has ever been confirmed as dead. When Sliver sent out that message, then died, it sent waves throughout the iterator communities. This would lead to factions being made of those who believed she really did solve it, and those who essentially thought it was a misinput upon death. Regardless, it led to a lot of iterators attempting to do forensic work on her for answers. And Moon wanted to write that perhaps it is for the best to just let Sliver of Straw rest in peace. Finally, moving on from Shoreline, there's only one pearl in Shaded Citadel, and this one is incredibly odd. In this pearl, we get a good look at how ancients used to talk, and to keep it blunt, they're pretentious. I get the impression when I read the Shaded Citadel pearl that they really love the sound of their own voices. The ancients, much like the iterators you see here, have very complex names, and They definitely love to remind you of every single accomplishment they ever made, ever in their life. It doesn't even matter. I will say though, while this pearl does come off as a little bit of a nothing burger, there is still some value to it. After all, we do get the name drop of another iterator, Unparalleled Innocence. But even Moon doesn't want to read all of this because the list is 620 items long. Moving higher up, we go to the exterior. This pearl is another message left by the ancients, and it tells of a time before 5 was fully complete. There's one sentence here that I find rather interesting though. Although our community is blessed with an ever-shrinking population, usually a mass exodus is often seen as a negative, but to say we're blessed implies that this is something of a positive. In some of the other pearls we've read so far, we've been seeing glimpses of this mindset, but I think this is the first time we're sort of getting it spelled out for us like this. This pearl also mentions that living on the surface is laughable, and seeing what happens nearly every single day, it makes sense why they say that. Other than that, this is another awesome pearl to get a mental image of just how the ancients used to be like, the way they speak, their views on the world around them, and of course, we also get Moon calling them skin parasites, which honestly, in my opinion, I think is just awesome and very well deserved. Now, we take a look at the chimney canopy, and it looks like this pearl is illegal according to Moon. Lucky for us, Moon believes we won't commit any crimes with this information, so she's willing to share it with us. This pearl speaks on taboos for the iterators. Specifically, it talks about the self-destruction taboo. For iterators, every single organic cell in their structure is ingrained with barriers and protocols designed to stop them from breaking the taboos. And to add salt to the wound, there's even taboos to prevent trying to break the taboo. But this pearl speaks on a method where it might be possible to break taboos. It would require the user to create a small sample of a living organic matter that is able to procreate and act separately and rewrite its genome to specifically rewrite the taboo and do nothing else. The only problem being that this is a very long and tedious process, unless you're running hundreds or even thousands of these parallel processes at the same time. She also makes a comment on how this would be pretty dangerous, as managing something of that scale would be incredibly risky. Okay, we're almost there. Sky Islands is pretty interesting, and that without some mods and DLC that we'll get into later, you might not actually be able to read all the pearls in one campaign alone. But in total, there are actually 5 different pearls to read here. So I'll go over the 5 pearl variants. Starting off strong, we actually discover probably what is the most interesting, funniest, and arguably most informative pearls out there. I kid you not, the DMs got leaked. Okay, look, I'm sure there's tons of people that have already made the iterator Discord server analogy, but there's really no other way to put it. They have trolls, they have moderators, just like whole works. And this first pearl is pretty interesting as well. First off, it labels itself as private. Think DMs. And even dated. And this conversation was between 5 Pebbles and a new name to the story up until this point, 7 Red Suns. 5 is confiding in 7, expressing his frustrations with his creators having abandoned him and all other iterators to endlessly pursuing answers to their problems. And 7 Espressa is basically the elephant in the room. They're all frustrated, but there's nothing else they can do. They either sit there and do nothing or keep working. Regardless, they're all stuck. He proposes an analogy that, much like bugs in a maze, eventually one will be able to find its way out. They just have to erratically try. And 5 here says something that for some reason deeply resonates with me. I struggle to accept being a bug. The next pearl is a private group chat apparently based on Sliver of Ocean, but all the participants are anonymous, so we can only go off acronyms for this one. First off, NGI gets kicked for being a jerk, which again is just so funny to me to think that these godlike beings still have to deal with trolls. But EP goes on to express that the troll may have had a good point there. For people who are even siding with Sliver, they're still upholding the taboo, and for what purpose? They may not know exactly what the triple positive was exactly, but maybe there's more than one way. The next pearl is a different private server featuring 5 Pebbles, Chasing Wind, Looks to the Moon, who is going by Big Sis Moon, which is just adorable, and No Significant Harassment. Chasing Wind brings up that apparently that the EP iterator, or rather now known as Erratic Pulse, is a pseudonym, and suspects that someone within their group is plotting to cross themselves out. While No Significant Harassment makes a joke that the plan to essentially dig straight down and plummet into something called the Void Sea, Moon reminds them to be respectful of this Void Sea. Chasing Wind says that apparently they're going to attempt a sort of breeding program, and Moon takes it upon herself to try to find whoever this is and talk to them about it. Jokes aside, I do think it's important to point out here though that whatever this Void Sea is, it's highly revered, and, at least according to Moon, something that's worth respecting. The next pearl is darker than the previous ones. It's Moon to the public server. She's informing everyone that 5 Pebbles has drastically increased its water intake and has not been responding to anyone. Moon is without water, and she makes it very clear that if everyone is unable to reach him in time, or just someone is able to reach him in time, and convince him to stop whatever he is that he's doing, Moon will die. If it gets to that point, Moon plans to use her privileges to force a communication with 5. This is apparently a very unpleasant experience for everyone, so she aims to only do it as a last-ditch effort, but by looking at her now, I see how well that ended. This is the last Sky Island Pearl, and it's a forced communication between Moon and 5. She begs for him to stop, but clear signs that she is not doing well, and 5 just tells her that she could not have chosen a worse time to interrupt him, and that he will never forgive this. Farmer Ray's has 2 pearls. The first one talks about a time before the discovery of the void fluid. It talks about how to strip oneself of natural urges, namely, in this instance, gluttony. Moon goes on to talk about how once void fluid was discovered, starvation as a tactic to cross oneself out became an obsolete method. However, it's not to say that the void fluid was 100% successful, and that, and I quote, if your ego was big enough, not even the void fluid could entirely cross you out, and a faint echo of your pompousness would grandiosely haunt the premises forever. End quote. So even with the void fluid becoming more accessible, some still opted for the starvation and tea route. This is another one of those annoying pretentious pearls courtesy of the ancients constantly needing to remind you of every single accomplishment in their lives instead of getting to the point, which is a literal bane of my existence. But between the texts of pure ego, we do hear about this thing called nectar again, and how they're grateful for the delivery of said nectar to their location. In simple terms, this is a confirmation receipt. Alright, last place. Subterranean. This place is another conversation log, with private discussions between 7 Red Suns and Chasing Winds. Chasing Wind asked if they heard from 5 recently, to which the answer is no. Apparently, Unparalleled Innocence took some pictures of 5's can and posted it to the public server, and 5 did not look good at all. Apparently, 5 has something called the Rot, and from what they say, it's pretty bad too. And, to top it off, Moon has been unavailable for some time. And at long last, the final pearl. In this pearl, Moon explains that void fluid thing we've been hearing so much about. Essentially, at the core of this planet lies an entity known as the Void Sea. Due to its vacuum, void-like quality, this led to a massive boom in technology. But more importantly, anything that interacts with it is completely destroyed and never returns. Asterisks on that though. And that, at long last, is every single colorful pearl obtained within the Survivor campaign. There are still a lot more, and I mean a lot more pearls thanks to the aforementioned Rain World Downpour DLC, but we'll get into that at a much later date. But, with all that being said, now that we've read all the pearls and explored this world thoroughly, let me try to at least explain the lore of Rain World. So I'm just going to shoot a quick disclaimer that this is my personal interpretation of the lore, okay? And with that out of the way, let's finally talk about the story of Rain World, okay? Before we, as a select cat, come into the picture and the events of the game begin, it starts with people just known as the Ancients. They're a primarily spiritual civilization who are heavily implied to be something akin to Buddhism, especially when it came to the existence of reincarnation. Now, the Ancients had a problem. Well, they had quite a few, but the biggest problem was the reincarnation issue better known as the cycles. Because in reality, this was a civilization or even a planet that was basically forced to be immortal. No one could ever truly die. No matter what happened, when they died, they would just wake back up again. So they began to try to look for a way to essentially bring all their cycles to an end and die permanently. Among some of their earliest ideas included things like attempting to get rid of natural urges such as the need for food, but it just wasn't what they were hoping for. Unfortunately for the Ancients, battling natural urges, as they put it, would be one of their biggest cruxes in their journey to find their answer to this global issue, because even their attempts to distance oneself from the self, they still would often give in to urges. This would be something that would come back to bite them in the butt later. The Ancients continued to look for and try different methods to escape the cycles. It wasn't until they were mining one fateful day and discovered a substance they called void fluid. And to make things better, whatever went into this fluid never came back, which meant they finally found it. They found what they were looking for. So they got to work making massive machines to drill and filter this fluid, which also had a bonus point, making for really good energy. But there is a problem. When you try to mine a resource that destroys everything it touches, it means you have to keep making drills. But I guess that's a problem you don't really need to fix anytime soon if you have full intention of abandoning this project and everything else along with it, so I guess that's fine. However, there is a second issue. Remember how I said earlier that the ancients' urges and egos would come back to haunt them? Well, as it turns out, those who were unable to let go of worldly belongings, were too arrogant, or were too egotistical, would be trapped in a limbo, a place between the living and the transcended. So some ancients saw that and went, oh hell no, which honestly is pretty fair, and decided either to go back to older methods or keep working towards new solutions. But at the very least, the void fluid still makes for incredible power and a good plan B. But now they have a problem, a rather big problem, if you will. And how does one solve a problem no one else seems to have the answer to? Well, you ask a computer, of course. Okay, first step, we need computers, and maybe like somewhere between the 10s and 100s, so I'm not really sure yet. Oh, and they need to be incredibly powerful, able to handle literally anything. Okay, well, this thing is massive, but you know what? That's fine, it's cool. We're not here to make it perfect, just get the job done. Oh wait, you're saying computers need to cool down? Oh shit, we're gonna need a big ass liquid cooler for this. Maybe the ocean will do? Yeah, sure, stick it there. They're like the size of oil rigs anyways. Next step, give these mega supercomputers your impossible question and wait until one comes up with a solution. Surprise third step, give them a sentience so they can think, feel, and communicate with one another, essentially making artificial life. And while you're at it, give them the ability to feel pain. This is not an asshole move to do. Fourth step, make it impossible for them to self-destruct. They are living with this pain forever. And final step, abandon your children. So in comes the iterators into the picture. These absolutely massive superstructures are basically supercomputers with artificial life, and they were all created with the same idea in mind, finding a solution to the great problem. There was one teensy-weeny little problem, however, when it came to the iterators. Remember how they needed a water supply to keep from breaking apart? Well, much like a crappy laptop trying to run GTA, they overheat bad. And when they filter out all that water, it causes a huge amount of vapor to form constantly. The ancients had no choice. They had to move to living on top of the iterators in order to be safe from the rain. And I'd like to mention two things. First off, there's a good chance that this isn't just catastrophic rain, but most likely piping hot, steaming rain constantly being poured down on the planet, which would explain the more humid-like look of this ecosystem has, but also why the rain just insta-kills just about anything it touches. And secondly, that this is an important thing for the iterators to do, otherwise they will get buildup, and this causes literal pain for them, which is just like, seriously? What the actual hell is wrong with you? Why would you get the robot the ability to feel pain? The ancients ended up living in essentially a utopia where nothing went wrong ever. And even if there were issues, they could just ask their supercomputer god to solve it for them while they either sat around doing nothing, waiting for the big problem, or took their chances in crossing themselves out the older ways. And while quite a few of them became echoes, with the high likelihood that there's tons more out there, over time the ancients dwindled out and just went extinct, leaving their greatest creations behind. And in turn, the iterators were stuck, doomed to either endlessly work on a problem that arguably no longer needs an answer, or to just slowly break down over time. Or they could try to find a way to break past their programming and attempt to find a way to ascend themselves. So there are quite a few name-drop iterators throughout the story, but the big players are Looks to the Moon, 5 Pebbles, and Sliver of Straw. So one day, Sliver of Straw gives the triple affirmative, meaning that essentially they found the solution to the great problem. And immediately after that, she died. This whole situation led to a bunch of uproar and the creation of two factions, the Sliver believers and the Sliver non-believers. Now this is not really 100% confirmed, at least I don't think so, but sort of heavily implied. But I personally theorize that 5 Pebbles, after what I can imagine was near endless cycles of feeling frustrated with the situation, created what is essentially an alt account to go into a pro-Sliverist group and hear what they had to say. And he wanted to use this information to see if maybe there was a way to cross himself out. With those ideas in mind, he started to run several parallel processes. A process that requires a ridiculous amount of power to focus on the project. While on paper it wouldn't have been too bad, he shares his water supply with Moon, and doing hundreds and thousands of these processes, he was using so much water there was hardly any left for Moon to use. Moon would try to reach out to others that asked him to help her to stop 5 from consuming so much water, but no one had any luck. This would leave Moon with no choice but to do a forced communication with 5 as a last-ditch effort. This would interrupt 5 and his project, doing irreparable damage to 5 and releasing potentially what would have become the Rot. And unfortunately for Moon, it was too late, experiencing a likely slow and painful shutdown, all the while collapsing into the ocean. But to dial it back a few seconds, and again, this is more specifically my personal theory, but I like to think that the experiment involved something that wasn't quite the Rot just yet, seeing as how those type of cells are also able to destroy neighboring cells and tissues. If I had to theorize, I bet he was trying to rewrite it to just destroy but not infest you like an average cancerous cell does. But when Moon began that forced communication, it most likely caused those cancer cells and the delicate process to not only get interrupted, but maybe even corrupted. Almost like a corrupted file in a sense, but organic in its disposition. And that is where the game begins. If I'm honest, I have no idea if my recount of the lore is correct or not, so I can only hope it's on some level kinda right. Maybe, I hope. 85%? So again, please take this with a grain of salt. I don't have the full story. I'm just sort of going off the pearls and environmental storytelling. But now what we do have is an idea of what may have happened to what led Rain World to being Rain World. So here we are now. Every pearl collected, neurons delivered to Moon, 5 talked to. We now know what happened to this world, why and how it became the world it is today, and what transpired between 5 and Moon to lead to this moment in time. And, well, that's it, isn't it? You know, I kind of went back and forth on how to feel about all of this. Yes, there was a thrill of seeing some of my theories come to be true, and the excitement of achieving something that seemingly not many had done. I was proud of myself for managing to do all of this. Prior to this moment, I never considered myself someone who would be willing to fight so hard for something. I felt like I should have been happy about this moment, but honestly, I wasn't. And I really struggled to put a finger on exactly why I wasn't happy. I struggled for a very long time, both by this point and before the end of the game, to figure out what exactly was causing this feeling. Didn't I get everything I was hoping for? I came into this game not knowing what to expect, but getting so much. I kind of felt like a kid leaving an amusement park. I knew I needed to leave eventually, but I didn't want to leave just yet. But there was something deeper lying underneath that feeling. Something that honestly took me a long time to find the right words for. I imagine for a decent number of people out there, there's a form of media out there that just gets you. A song that resonates with you, a movie that touches your heart, a book that feels like your story, or a game that gets you on a personal level. It's more than immersion. It's more than just the difficulty or the world or the inhabitants or the who remains or whatever should be applicable here. It feels like for just a moment, someone saw you, understood you, felt you, and sympathized with you. I think that's what Rain World did for me, but I didn't even realize it until I was waist deep. And well, when it comes to Rain World, there's a bit I need to confess about myself for the rest of this to make sense. Well, obviously not one-to-one. I feel like I saw many parts of myself in this journey. I've been on my own for a very long time. I had no friends and I had no family to turn to. I didn't grow up in a safe and happy home. And every day felt like survival. Tread carefully, store food when you can, learn and study and understand each and everyone's actions, their tones, their voice, and their moods. Play your part carefully. Don't draw too much attention on yourself. Do what you can to survive. And repeat this every day for years on end. Wake up, survive, do it again and again and again. I was so tired of doing this over and over and over again. I struggled at everything I did. I didn't see a future for myself that wasn't painful. I was so worn down from just waking up every single day. I felt so alone no matter how much I tried to reach out for companionship or help. I didn't have anything left. I didn't have anyone left. I felt insignificant, like I knew that I was a very unimportant mark on the world or anyone I knew. Over time, I started to feel disconnected, and I had this constant running thought in my mind that I wanted to go home. I wasn't even sure what that meant, but I knew that I was tired and I just wanted to rest. But sleep was never enough. Nothing was ever enough to stop that pain. And every day I woke back up again and had to survive again and swallow that ever-growing feeling that I didn't want to be here anymore, that I wanted to go home, that I wanted to cross myself out too, just like the ancients did. I wanted to leave and make sure I never came back. I had nothing tying me to this world anyways, but for some reason, I kept pushing and fighting back against those feelings because people said I had to. I shouldn't give up. So much more. It gets better. And I wanted so badly believe that there was more, that there was a light at the end of that tunnel, that it would turn out that my hardships and struggles and suffering really could come to an end someday. Despite how impossibly hard it felt to keep going, I really did believe things could get better. But I didn't think I had the energy to stick around and see that end result. And even as I tried to find ways to leave and kept attempting to find my own way out, I still kept hoping deep down that they would be right, that things would get better. And you know what? They were both right and wrong. As I got older, more years went by, I learned a lot more about the world and myself. I met new people, went to new places, saw beautiful sights, helped people, hurt others, gained things I wished for ever since I was young. And those things did make me happy. But despite everything, despite all these moments, all the people I met along the way, the lives I've encountered, the sights, the people, the world, I still wanted a way out. And it definitely didn't help that it's not like everything was all better by that point. And depending when this goes out, would I say it will probably age like wine or cheese? But it's not like the world itself is doing good. There is so much senseless pain and suffering. So many people want people like me dead, and it doesn't seem like things are ever going to get better. At least, not in my lifetime. But maybe in the next one, I can be someone who is truly happy. So I think once I read all the pearls, and I knew what happened to the world, and what happened to Five Pebbles and Moon, and what happened to the Ancients, I just felt crushed. This wasn't just any world. This was a world full of people who felt and thought just like me, who wanted nothing more than to leave it. I saw beings trapped, doing whatever they can to escape, no matter how much it hurts those around them, because the pain of waking up again grew to be too much. I could understand the pain and frustration that came with it, and the complicated feelings that follow. I feel for Moon, and I understand Five. It may not be one-to-one with the Ancients or the story, but I do understand that feeling. And I was walking those same steps as them. Again, I initially came into this game thinking it was some type of elaborate rage bait game joke. But both in the game and through playing it on this channel, I met so many new people cheering me on, telling me to keep pushing, to not give up. I dared to be hopeful and curious for honestly the first time in forever. I dared to challenge myself to do things I normally would have given up on. And for what honestly was the first time in years, I was looking forward to what was coming next. I actually looked forward to tomorrow. It didn't matter how hard things got or how difficult some tasks felt. I was looking forward to it all. I was okay not being a hero, but for a moment, I was really starting to feel okay. I met new faces, people I cared for, and realized I could never help them in a way that matters. In the same way, I can't help the people in my life in a way that matters. I was struggling to say goodbye for what I knew was the last time to the people I knew. I struggled and fought and believed, and for what? What will be the end? I've contemplated a lot about whether or not to really talk about and show the final moments of Rain World. And I know it may be pretty hypocritical of me to withhold it now, given the fact that I've talked about plenty of other things at this point pertaining to the game, but believe it or not, I am still withholding a lot of information from you guys. There is still so much left to go over. Features I didn't mention, the other two base games Slick Cat, and all of the Downpour DLC campaigns. If you have gotten this far into the video and you haven't played this game for yourself, take this as a sign that you really should. After all, this game is really what you make of it, so your conclusion may not even come close to mine, and I think that's beautiful. But when I reached the end, like I mentioned before, I felt a bit guilty. I felt like I let everyone down. And I know that's just more of a me thing, but it was hard to shake that feeling. I think for me, and the unique way that I played it, it felt like a lot was ending at once. The game, a moment in the channel, a moment in my life. I wasn't sure if I was ready to say goodbye. It was a lot. And then this song played. Maybe it's just me, but being down there really reminded me of what it feels like to cross yourself out. It's not a big flashing thing, not something worth celebrating. It's cold and lonely, and even to the very end, this melody that accompanied us throughout our journey was here again. Journey. I like to think that this melody and leitmotif symbolizes the cycles and how we're all ensnared by them. Sometimes it's subtle in the song, like a reminder of something that happened a long time ago. And sometimes it was in the forefront, reminding you that you're here again, doing this again, for better or for worse. Each version that you hear carries some weight to it, some more than others, but this version, in our final moments here, it's melancholic. Still reminding you that the cycles are here, but it's different this time. I'm no musical expert, but the song always felt like the embodiment of saying, I'm going to go away now, goodbye. It's not a victory, and it's not a defeat either. It's just something that you did. And I think Five Pebbles said it best. Not that it solves anyone's problems, but my own. So, that was Rain World. A game that got ironically scored rather low by the critics, but is so deeply loved by its community. This game is really unlike anything else. And I know people love to say this all the time, but I really do feel like this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime games like Undertale is. And now that all the fancy stuff is out of the way, I wanted to give a crack at giving my personal review on the game myself, since I was able to see more of this game than arguably any critic review has time to do so. So, let's talk about the good first. The obvious standout things about this game is the art and music. It is without a shadow of a doubt incredible. They do such a good job selling the feeling they want to give, especially when it comes to feelings of loneliness and emptiness. And the way that the music is not always present makes it so that when the music is playing, it's very effective and really helps to lend itself to the feeling they're trying to convey. This, paired with stunning scenery, makes many experiences so memorable. Another awesome thing about this game is the AI. Like I said way earlier in this video, the AI on the creatures lends itself to making it feel so much more alive. And even the non-AI characters that you do meet, like Five and Moon, are so fascinating. They both carry such a mysterious beauty about them. And again, the moments building up meeting both of them are some of my favorite moments in the game. I also really like the message this game sends. It's sort of like an enemy to modern gaming, where everything is handed to you within seconds of failure. We, as gamers, tend to spend a lot of our times wondering why games don't hit like they used to. And I think a lot of it comes from a mixture of both our big old adult brains and a modern gaming and internet sayings. All the answers are right there. What you will fight, where you'll need to go, you can just figure it out. Maybe a big part of the fun for us when we played games when we were younger was the fact that there was no desire to be good or efficient. Just explore and appreciate the adventure. And Rain World's gameplay calls back on that old feeling. I also really appreciate the tightness and the explorative properties of this game, especially when it comes to the controls. It's so satisfying to go from barely being able to jump right to scaling vertical towers. It may not get easier, but it always stays rewarding. And lastly, the community. Ever since I started playing Rain World, I've met so many new faces and people, and excited to discover things alongside me. It really felt awesome to have so many people on my side in this scenario. And as for some of the things I did not enjoy about playing this game, honestly, I don't think that there's a lot I hate about this game. I feel like at first I would have said too difficult, but honestly I just started to see difficulty as part of the journey and the story itself. So it's hard to say that it's difficult. The spiders, the deep waters, and some other enemies can easily be turn-offs for this game for those who have a deep fear of things like that, making it hard for some to get fully into the game. Which, speaking of, I wish there were more options for quality of life. The Rain World Remix mod helps with a good chunk of this, but I do wish that there were a few more accessibility settings in mind, like toggling certain audio sounds or making certain visuals more clear. I can understand why difficult games like these tend to not reach the same heights as other games might, and due to the nature of the game, not much is publicly known or said about it, leaving it as that one really hard game. But given the chance, I wonder if this would leave the same lasting impression it did on me or other people. Overall, yes, I would recommend the game, but I also understand why this game might not be for everyone. Maybe when it's on sale, give it a go for yourself if you haven't played the game yet. I think, at the very least, it's worth it to give it a try. Gosh, so that was the video. I am so sorry this took me so long to make. I promised this like 2 years ago. Gosh. This has been a long time coming, and every time I get to moments like these, I keep telling myself I'll be ready to actually talk to you guys, and then I'm not ready. I guess starting from the top, thank you guys so much. To all the people who are watching my journey in Rain World, to all the people watching this video, this was a lot of firsts for me. This was a lot of doing a lot of new things at the same time. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I can recommend that. I'm not trying to be like a person that downplays things. I'm just trying to like say it as it is. If you're gonna try something new, maybe do it one thing at a time. Just a pro tip from me. Oh gosh, I sincerely hope that I did this video justice. I wanted to try and hit a good spot between still leading some mystery behind and not just spilling all the beans that I could spill, but also sharing what made the game so special to me. It's not so much like a detailed diatribe on the game, but just kind of like a, hey, This game left a lasting impression on me, and I wanted to talk about it. So I hope you guys like it too. Gosh, again, I told myself I'd be a lot more prepared for this when I wanted to record this like final thought thing and just be like, hey, it's done. I would love to do more things like this in the future. No guarantees that it'll be anything like this, and no promises that it's going to be something that's actually done in a timely manner, let's be honest. But I would love to experiment more with projects like these. This is my first time really trying something of this magnitude. This is probably the most ambitious project I have ever done in my life. And I'm not even joking. Like, a big reason why I wanted to get the model up to shape, the main reason why I wanted to get the script all fixed up. I hope that, you know, the video was like interesting and funny and I feel like if I stay here any longer than I have to, I'm going to end up talking in circles infinitely. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet for now. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, consider even subscribing. It really helps. It lets me know that you guys like the things that I'm doing. And like I said, I want to try and do more of these in the future. So I guess the more positive reception I get, the more I can get an idea of like, do people enjoy this? I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, time zone, wherever you guys are. And again, thank you guys so much for watching anything I do, my Let's Plays, this video. Just thank you. And perhaps we'll see each other again someday. Who knows? Bye? I don't have an outro. Bye. Bye.